Is it everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out. But man, you can't deny that view.
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody, my name is Kevin.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies and TV shows. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about The Last of Us, Episode 2, Infected. Joel, Tess, and Ellie traverse through an abandoned and flooded Boston hotel on their way to drop Ellie off with a group of Fireflies. Another great episode, I think, this week, guys. The Last of Us, I think, is off to a really hot start. We have a lot to talk about, and I think this was a big episode for many things to happen. I am a little more cautious, I think, of what's to come, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But Adam, what did you think? As you know, again, as we said, such a huge fan of the game. Did this do it for you? Did this maybe make Ellie a little better? Because that was a concern we had going into this episode.
Yeah, I think so. I think seeing her more in action, I think the first part of the episode, I was, still a little cautious, but as she, I guess, went into that, actually started settling into the actual role of Ellie, I think she started working a little bit, better, portraying the character.
Right. No, and I think she did a really great job, too, which we will talk a little bit more about. Julie, what did you think of this episode?
Overall for the episode, I really enjoyed it. I guess piggybacking off the Ellie conversation, you definitely see her getting more comfortable in the role. And I think also, at the beginning in the last episode, she's so standoffish, she's very aggressive, like you said, cursing, flipping them off. But now I think she's becoming a little more comfortable in her position in the group. She knows that they're not going to, I guess, kill her, and they're kind of looking out for her. They have their own reasons why, but so you see her start to come out of her shell a little bit more.
Right, and I think there was some really great character development there, which I think it's going to only get better as the show goes on. So that's good to see. I think right away Bella Ramsey seems to be stepping into the role of Ellie, making it a little bit her own, while also still being the Ellie that we know and love from the video game for that comparison. Which, again, just so you know, we are going to be talking about spoilers this episode, so if that is something you want to avoid, I do recommend actually watching the episode, then coming back to hang out with us and see our thoughts. Just a little heads up so you guys know. But what I really want to talk about, something that this show is doing, which I think is really cool, is just from the beginning. Again, we're given another flashback into the beginning of the infection. And I know I said last episode I didn't want to know too much about how the infection started, and I didn't want too much history of it. Maybe I am stepping back a little bit because I think they're doing a really good job. And a lot of that I think has to do with Craig Mazin, who's the writer of this show. He actually did, if anyone's seen Chernobyl, which was on HBO, was an excellent show about just the terror and horror of the whole Chernobyl incident. And I'm really seeing that influence. Ironically, he didn't direct this episode. He actually just wrote for it. Neil Druckmann, the creator of The Last of Us, directed this episode. And as far as I know, this is his first directing intro into anything live action based on just, a quick skim of his IMDb. And he did a really good job just bringing the fear. That maybe there is something to be said for a video game director jumping into the live action. Because again, he made the fear elements, I think, in this episode worked extremely well. The whole episode, just even from the beginning flashback through the introduction of the clickers, I think the tension was there this entire episode. Even knowing that, your main characters aren't going to die, essentially. We have the idea that that's not going to happen. If you could convince me otherwise with some of the tension, I think they did a really good job with that. Let's start with this, though, Adam. What did you think of that intro? Is it doing more for you with this backstory? Are you liking these little, I want to say, cold opens to each of the episodes so far?
I am. I think I may have mentioned this the last time. It's like expanding on the universe. I know with the games, it's pretty much just kind of thrown out there. Mm-hmm. It's just assumed that this is just something that's happening. But I like this little bit of a expansion, if you will, onto the universe.
Yeah, it's chilling, in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it has to do with because we were just some may argue still in a pandemic to some extent. Yes. It's more relatable in a lot of ways to us. So I think there is maybe just that fear of something like this happening. Maybe not
Right.
fungus extent, but again, it's relatable to us more so than ever. What did you think of that opening, Julia? I know you were kind of like on the edge when we were watching it together.
I didn't even realize. I knew back when this was coming out that people involved in Chernobyl were going to be in this, but I didn't realize from a writing standpoint. And then you reminded me, and like everything kind of clicked into place. And just that whole cold opening was just, you felt the dread escalating from the moment they picked up, because she was a researcher or professor. They picked her up and she's like, what's going on? And then her realizing the extent of the bit by bit, like, oh, why would you do this to the sample? It's a human sample. Like, oh shit, it's a human sample. And then realizing that there's still people unaccounted for from, the biting incident at the grain factory or whatever. And then just her response, he's like, how do we do this? What's the cure? She goes, there's no cure. Just bomb it all.
Right. And I like how it ties into the episode a lot, because as they're walking, because I think there were any craters and stuff in the city in the video game from what I remember, but just and just in the show in general now, there's a backstory to why that is, why there's giant craters everywhere, why there's no people really around. I kind of like the explanation. Like Adam said, they're doing this really great world building, and I think these little cold opens are adding a lot to it. Again, I don't know if I really did want them, but I think they are working extremely well for the show.
I'm really enjoying them and really, piecing things together. I remember even just watching people after the first episode, they kept pointing out, and I don't remember if it was in the game or not, but now the second cold open, it really confirms it. They're like, oh, the outbreak must have been due to like contaminated crops, like grain. And in the first episode, Joel and Sarah keep narrowly avoiding eating, I guess, flour products. Like they ran out of pancake mix, and Joel turned down the biscuits from the neighbors, and Sarah said no to the cookies because there was raisins, and then Joel forgot the cake. And then it turns out that the original outbreak began in that flour factory.
Yeah, see, it's little things
so to see that kind of come back was interesting.
Yeah, it's literally little things like that show excellent writing, and we can go back and we can see how everything connects. So let's talk about the big thing. So the big thing is, if you really think about it, maybe not a lot of stuff, and also not a lot happens in this episode. In the video game, this is a huge section where they traverse the city, right, to get to the next section. So in thinking about it, I was always wondering, how are they going to translate that, from the game to the live action? And I think the show did an excellent job, even if I do feel it felt a little bit limited in some sense, where maybe I wanted a little more traversal to some extent. What did you think of this, Adam? Because again, this is all high tension, and we also introduced the clickers to the audience for the first time. So what are your thoughts on just the whole thing in general, this whole setup?
I kind of came to the realization that, like, wow, we are going to be moving pretty quickly, I guess, just because, I kept checking the time just out of curiosity, just to see how far along we were. And I was like, oh, I guess we're just going to keep going. I think it works. It's not, I don't think it detracts from anything. But it definitely goes to show you like how much more of a different tone the game is than the show.
Different experience.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
Different experience.
Absolutely. 100%.
And do you think it works? Do you think one works better than the other if you had to pick one?
I don't know, because they're totally different mediums.
Okay.
I'm enjoying them for both of them, what they are. They obviously both have their pros and cons. I don't know. Part of me still likes the game a little bit more. Maybe I'm just biased to it.
That could
just
be.
Because,
you experienced it first, so of course there's always that too. Right.
I don't know. That seemed more immersive just because I'm controlling the characters. So I guess maybe that's what. I don't know.
I think there's an argument there for that. But the clickers, I have to say, are absolutely terrifying. They did a beautiful job.
Oh, yes.
The clickers, for people who don't know, they respond by sound. If any sound that's heard, they kind of go after it and chase after you. That's like their whole shtick. They did a really good job. Even in the post discussion where they talked a little bit about the clicker design, they were trying to change it, I think, at some point, but they're like, we can't. It's just the clicker design's too perfect, and they left it the same. And that goes to show just how strong the original designs were for those characters. The scenes of tension with Joel, Tess, and Ellie just having to sneak through the museum section were fantastic. I mean, there's one particular shot I absolutely loved where Joel is standing with his back towards, I think it's like a column, and he's reloading his gun, which it's not something you think about. You don't usually see that in shows where they have to like reload ammo into anything or anything like that. Or in a game, it's like instantaneous, right? There's really no like levity to a situation, but he's got like the flashlight in his mouth and he's reloading his revolver, and you hear it just like clicking in the background. And you see like little traces of it, like just going click, great cinematography. And I think Neil Druckmann really landed that tension that I personally felt in the game in those scenes where you weren't sure like what was going to happen or what was around the corner. In a game, you have the hindsight of like using like a vision and see what's around you, but in a show, you don't have that. So you have to go by what the sound is. Julie, what did you think of the whole like clicker interaction inside the museum?
Absolutely terrifying. They were terrifying in the game. They were maybe, I don't know, equally or more in this. And again, like you said, that your main characters are going to be safe to some extent. And the fear that I had, the tension was just so well executed. Because again, that they're going to make it out, but my entire body was tense. My hands were like at my face. Like I was so nervous for them. And just that sound, even that scene you were talking about specifically, like he's quietly just trying to get the empty bullet casings out, and then like gets given away by like stepping on the
right.
glass.
I think even better, he puts the bullets in his pocket. That was a nice touch.
Yeah,
he didn't like just throw like the empty casings on the floor.
Right.
Like, that's a good idea. I never would have thought of that.
But just the delicate. Everything has to be.
It's a delicate balance, very much so.
Yes.
And I think they captured that. That's good. That's good storytelling, good visual storytelling. And if anything, that this show is doing an excellent job when it hasn't so far really beaten you over the head. Maybe with something a little bit we'll talk about. I thought personally, but overall, I think they did a really good job with that. Another change before we talk about some of the character stuff was it looks like the infection's been changed severely. So this is where we'll get into some of the game comparisons. It's unavoidable, guys. I try to save it towards the end of the conversation, but you have to. So it looks like originally in the game, it was a spore infection. You would breathe in the spores, you would become infected, and that's when it would take a hold of you and go forward. Now that doesn't seem to be the case. Now, Adam, would you explain the kind of change they made, and what do you think as far as what they've done with that?
So now I guess the infection, is initially through the consumption of the infected flower.
Right.
And then it's only transmitted through a bite or through, what was it? I think that was pretty much it, right?
That's pretty much it. I didn't hear like scratches or anything
no,
like that.
yeah.
It looks like it was just a bite from what I gather. What do you and that's not the only change, right? So they're all connected via a giant network.
Yep.
At first, I don't know how I felt about that. I thought that was kind of weird, but I kind of see why they did it. Do you see why they kind of did it, Adam? What do you think of that before we kind of describe it?
See, I was thinking, I couldn't tell if this was like Neil Druckmann's like reimagining of the game. Like maybe this was something that he wanted to initially do, but he didn't get a chance to.
Okay.
Or if this was just, some sort of adaptation for TV. I don't know. I guess it could go either way, but I didn't hate the idea.
No, I think it's a good idea. And I think the reason why, and again, we'll talk about that too later, is it's going to set up different scenarios for why things will happen where maybe say other things can't. And well, I guess a little bit in this instance is the military is more heavily involved in the video game coming after them and doing things like that. They decided not to go that path with the show. Therefore, we have to have another obstacle that the heroes in this case have to deal with. So by creating this large network, it's easier for, say, these infected to come running at them at a moment's notice, where that creates a huge, even more so, of a tension in the area. So this network that, again, anything they just bump, it seems like they could just bump into something and it can literally just create a mass like running of the fungus monsters towards them. And I think that's pretty cool. Is it a little Deus Ex Machina in some ways? Yeah, I mean, it just can kind of like happen out of nowhere, I guess, if the plot calls for it. But again, I guess if it keeps the plot moving, I don't have a huge issue with it. What do you think of that change, Julie? Do you like that? I mean, the one positive I'll give it is it kind of makes sense to what the fungus is, right? A fungal infection kind of does that, at least in this story. What do you think of that?
I agree. I mean, even going back to those, I really am enjoying pretty much every HBO show. I like watching those end of the episode discussions. And they really seem to have done their research as far as, fungi and fungal infections. And they didn't give an exact parameter, but they said like actual fungus can communicate with itself for mass distances. So it is based on actual science and biology, I guess. Like you said, it is a little bit, I guess, convenient for storytelling. And I find that it probably would be something that's easily, I guess, where you can catch it like, oh, they didn't do it there. They probably stepped on something or something. Like, I know they made it a point where Joel, like, hit the one thing with his rifle. And he's like, oh, it's dried up. The only thing, it's a major nitpick. I didn't like how when they showed that one horde, they were just kind of like resting, I guess. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I'm used to like more of like the milling about and the hiding in the corners.
Yeah, I guess they've been there so long, they're kind of just...
Right, and there's no
active
active thing for them, right. Yeah, that's a nitpick. I'm curious to see how this, specific...
Yeah, I want to see
action plays out.
Yeah, I want to see how the mechanic works. I'll give it a little more time. I think I'm okay. I think I like it a lot, but again, I'll give it more time before I, come up with an ultimate decision there.
Right.
But the other thing, again, like we kind of said earlier, is this was really a well done, focused character episode. Joel and Ellie shared a couple of really great scenes so far together. The one in particular is when Tess has to move some of the rubble out of the way and Joel lifts her up, and then it just becomes an awkward situation, right? We have Joel and Ellie just sitting across from each other, just waiting. They're waiting for Tess to do what she has to do. And that was a really powerful moment, I thought. And I think that's kind of when I realized that Bella Ramsey really was Ellie to that extent, because I really got to see her character shine through, because she didn't come across as annoying. She came across more of just like, this is a crappy situation and I guess I have to make the best of it. And you did help me, so I kind of want to talk to you. And then Joel's also kind of warming up to her in his own very slow, cold way. I like that. And those are the moments I think that are going to make this show really strong. I will say, and I guess this leads more towards the end, is Tess really didn't do much for me. And in the game, again, this is the comparison here. We had a totally different scenario. Well, Tess gives her life away ultimately in the end. The show really didn't do much for me with Tess, but I don't know if the game necessarily did either in many ways. Like, I understand, like, she gives a whole speech like, oh, Ellie's supposed to be the cure. She's supposed to be, like, sacrificing herself to save the greater good. I don't know if I really cared that much, and I don't know if you're ever really supposed to, because in the game, I didn't feel like it was a huge deal either. Adam, what did you think? Because, again, there were changes made to this. Tessa's character, what do you think, ultimately?
I immediately, I think, liked the game version more.
Right.
I don't know. She just showed a little bit more compassion, I guess, as opposed to the show version to me.
Yeah, there was more with the performance, I think, in the game, right?
Yeah.
I felt like there was something a little more there. Possibly.
Yeah, that's what I felt. I guess the way that she went out in this episode was a little obviously different,
right?
Compared to the game, though.
Right, and then
I don't know.
So for the people at home, the comparison is in the game. Tess loses her life when the military comes, and she kind of like holds them off for a little bit so Joel and Ellie can get away. She just interrupts them, and they kill her in cold blood. And I mean, it is kind of anticlimactic in some way. You know what I mean? She's just killed by the military. She doesn't have like this grand send-off, which is, I guess, what Neil Druckmann kind of wanted to do. It almost felt like he wanted her to just show her like battling all these infected. But I mean, she really doesn't do that even in this instance either. She kind of just like throws some gasoline around and has a match, and then she makes out with an infected. What did you think of that, Adam? That was a little weird for me. I get why they did it, but I don't know if I liked it necessarily.
I don't know if that's just how. Is this what are we gonna see that again? We're gonna see like, is this just how the infected just kind of, I guess, attract to each other?
I guess they make out. It was weird. I don't know. I thought it was off-putting, to be honest, and I think it did a little bit less for her character in some ways, because it didn't feel right. Like, I understand they're fungus and they have like the tendrils and they're trying to outreach and connect to one another. I don't know if I would have done that, to be honest with you. It kind of stood out to me. What did you? I know, Julie, you were like grossed out. Like, what the hell is going on? I'm like, you were like, kiss, kiss, and then they went and they ended up. I'm like, oh no, they're actually doing that.
I didn't think it was gonna happen. Yeah, something about it. I don't mind the idea of the tendrils going in, but something about it was just a little too over sensualized or sexualized for me. If it was more of like a violent thing where the tendrils kind of shot out and did it, but the fact like he moved slowly towards her, got real close, and it was just too intimate.
Yeah, it feels more intimate than heroic.
Right. Yes, and that was the other thing too. Like, I think the impact of her sacrifice is a little more meaningful here, where, like you said, in the military, she just kind of holds them off, but here she is successfully able to just completely stop the threat,
Right.
but almost didn't. And that was almost nerve-wracking too, where I'm like, oh my gosh, after all this, she's still not going to be able to do anything. And, in the end, she was successful, in her sacrifice, but I don't know.
Yeah. I didn't necessarily like it. I
saw it
go
as
ahead,
like it was kind of like his or I guess the I don't know, the infected's way of accepting her as infected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of. I mean, it didn't
like
need to be as
kind of
sexual as it
joining
was.
Yeah,
but
like inviting her
I
to
know.
the fold, right? Like
Yes.
saying, like,
Right.
come
And I know it
join
wasn't
us.
sexual, just, I don't know.
No, but regardless of how you look at it, it's weird, and it doesn't match. I feel like it tonally doesn't match what they were going for in the episode.
Right.
I think, and especially if they wanted to do like this like rewrite of Tess's character in a way, because and especially in the post-credit discussion, which again I really recommend everyone at home to check those out. Just stay for a few minutes extra, just watch this little discussion. It gives you so much insight into what they're doing in these episodes. If you want to make Tess give her a more memorable send-off and make her message of, Ellie is the hope that we have to save no matter what the cost, even if I'm that cost, like, this is what I believe in. Wouldn't, like, her fighting off the infected and, like, this, like, big hurrah, like, even if, like, the tendrils, like you said, shot out at her and she's, like, chopping them away or something and it's still coming after her and she's still holding the lighter, but, like, maybe her arm's, like, held back and she can't let it go in time and it's not gonna... Wouldn't that tension be so much more than her just kind of, like, making out with a infected guy and then dropping the lighter?
And it was
throwing
very
out there,
it was also very fear driven too, like the way what you just described, like she's going out in a blaze of glory, where I mean naturally so she's terrified once they fully enter and she's kind of frozen and she's trying to click the lighter on and it's not working. But your scenario that you just explained, I think would have been a huge improvement.
I think it would have helped just a little bit, especially again if you're gonna go the extra mile to rewrite her ending. Just give her something a little more than don't just kind of like thrust her to the side, because in some ways I understand, like you said, the military thing was kind of like she didn't do much for the military. She just kind of like was shot and then killed off screen and then that was the end of the story. Somehow that felt more impactful to me. I don't know. Again, it could be like Adam said, it could be just I experienced that first, so that's what I'm feeling. But who's to say? And that brings me to something else, which I don't know if this is necessarily a negative yet, but it's something I'm noticing. And they kind of said that again in these after credit discussions where they changed the military scenario due to reasons, essentially is what they said. And when you say reasons, that either leads me to believe budgetary reasons where they couldn't get this whole like military presence constantly going after them along with the infected, or they couldn't figure out a way to make it work in the show. Either way, Joel not fighting the human side of this pandemic, right, with the infected, you need that too, and I hope the show doesn't neglect that at any point, because Joel killing a person means just as much as it does killing an infected as well, because you need that other side of the tension. And I think, Adam, you'll agree with me, that's kind of what makes The Last of Us work. Not so much the infected part. The infected part's always going to be an issue for them, but really it's that human nature of a human versus human that's going to drive this story. And I hope they don't shy away with that, with the violence.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree. It completely changes the vibe and the playing field of, whether you are playing a game or the show itself, because it just changes the tone up.
And there's something about that nature, right? Of like, you're just being chased by humans as well as infected. And I think they need to keep that for the tone to stay. It looks like that will be coming back maybe more so in the next episode. I'm hoping. We'll see what happens. But it's just an observation. And also, again, it is a game versus the show kind of comparison here. But I do think the office building got a little little jaded, a little left out. I think they could have done a little more maybe in that setting. I don't know about you, Adam. I expected maybe just a little bit more. Because again, in the game, it's such a cool setting where you have like floors like slanting down and you have like these giant holes. And I think I want to say it, I think it's budgetary reasons they didn't go huge into it. But it would have been such a cool just set design for something to have happened there, even if they changed something.
I mean, I vividly remember there's some good encounters in the game that happen within those few buildings. So it's a shame that we didn't get to see some of them.
Yeah, because a lot of it was green screen too, which is I noticed it. Unfortunately, I think the more HD that we get with our TV shows, the more you start to see some of that stuff's not really there, and that background, as beautiful it is, just wasn't there. Julie, I know you noticed it a couple times too when they're staring at something like that. That's not there. Like, what are they looking at?
I tried not to. Even I guess circling back to the office building, I remember when they finally left, I was like, oh, they're done. And while this episode was super successful in building high tension moments, what was interesting about the office building, because it's a massive set for them to navigate through. So it's like tension, small respite or reprieve, and then tension again. Like you're constantly moving through it. It's a constant high tense situation. I mean, logistically, I understand why it was shortened. It helped keep the pace of the episode and the story, but
it feels like they were barely there. I think they were more in the museum setting than they actually were in the office.
Right.
The office building, I don't think I really could have pinpointed the difference, honestly. I think the
and I don't think
that they have any.
Did they have to kill anything in the office building either? Really?
No, it was just the clickers were just in the museum.
Right.
So, again, I understand the change. Is it a missed opportunity? Maybe, but again, if you didn't know it, it wouldn't bother you as much. So I'd be curious to see about people who didn't have that comparison, if they even noticed it, because they made such a big deal of it. I felt like at the end of this first episode where they showed the big silhouette of the building and the little clicker on the top of the building, like that was kind of cool. Yeah. We didn't ultimately get that. We kind of got it, but we also didn't. So.
And if anything, it could have made the clickers more impactful if in the office building they had to take out, a handful of just, run-of-the-mill infected. And then when they come across the clickers, especially for Ellie, to see this is a whole other animal.
Right. But we have a lot more to go. So I'm curious to see where, they take away from some parts and maybe add to some of the other moments I think that we're going to get. That's what I'm most curious to see. But I think with all that being said, I think we're ready to give our final scores. I'm going to give The Last of Us Episode 2 a 9 out of 10.
Nice knife. Where'd you learn to do that?
The circus.
This is another really great episode. I really don't have too many negatives along with it. In some opinions, I think it's a little bit weaker, just a smidge than the first episode, only because I didn't get some, especially the moment with Tess, I just thought was kind of strange, and I hope that was maybe just a one-off thing where they were trying to be a little experimental and give us something a little bit different, but really, this is a great show so far. This is a really strong episode, too, for them. Joel and Ellie are now alone. They're going to be the two characters traversing, and whoever they meet along the way should be really interesting. I'm not worried anymore as far as that. Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey as Joel and Ellie, respectively. I think they have really good chemistry together, and I think we're going to see that only get better and have us enjoy it more as time goes on. Adam, where'd you stand with this episode?
I am going to give it a 9 out of 10 as well. The episode just solidified, I think, the relationship between Joel and Ellie that I was really looking for. And if anything, it makes me more excited to see what's to come.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Julie, where do you stand with this one?
I'm going to give The Last of Us Episode 2 a 9 out of 10 as well.
Yes, sir. I would like your finest sweet, please. Yes, ma'am. Would you like me to check your luggage? Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am.
You're a weird kid.
You're a weird kid. Oh, fuck!
I'm sorry.
phenomenal follow-up episode. High stakes, high tension. Great character building, especially with Joel and Ellie, to see, like Adam said, that relationship develop, and see, them get a little more comfortable. So very excited to see as we progress, what's next.
Yeah, and if anything, the indication for the next episode seems like we're getting some new characters introduced, some fan favorites, as especially one particular fan favorite that's coming, I know. I can't wait to see what happens. The show's been excellent so far. It's marrying, a really great show with a video game concept exceptionally. Again, I just can't really wait to see where this goes. But let us know what you guys think. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you think maybe there should have been more of something, less of something? What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments down below. But that being said, my name's Kevin. That guy's Adam. That's Julie. We are the Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.